27th of December, 2024. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. A lot has happened in a week, and the deep state has been trying to get help anywhere in any way they can, causing a lot of cleanup on our end. From fake money schemes to AI infiltrations, the lights are on, and there is nowhere to hide. The Nazi Hydra division of scientist bases were found over the last week, and it was not what we expected. The secret space program's operatives' desperation turned out to be a blessing as we finally found the Hydra's home base. And we have a lot more information on Alley's AI, the deep state's X-curse, and the netherworld's hold on Earth. Well, I finally made it to a GIA report. It's been kind of a busy week, week and a half, I guess, since the last time we talked, or almost a week, I guess. And yeah, it's been a rough road, I can say that. And most of it hasn't had anything to do with the deep state, although let's just say they would love to have a success. Just one win, in an infiltration from the netherworld. But in the regular world, I know there were some people asking about meetings and what's going on. Honestly, there really isn't a whole lot of meetings going on. The deep state is chasing things that the netherworld is doing, and we're getting rid of those things before they have an opportunity to, let's just say, bring it here. In the last several days, we have celebrated a holiday or two. There is a couple holidays that have happened over the last week. So if you were celebrating, I hope you had a chance to enjoy some time with friends and family. I had a very short window of opportunity to spend some time with my daughter and some friends, and it was okay. It was a rough, what you would call a Christmas, I guess, for me. Most of the afternoon was spent working, and most of Christmas Eve, much of the same. And it was one of the deep state's hopeful days of major changes for them. As far as kind of the regular world is concerned, there's a lot of talk on the internet about arrests happening and that Mar-a-Lago is really a prison. And, we've kind of heard it all, as far as that is concerned everywhere. And none of that's happening in any way, shape, or form. Mar-a-Lago is still run by the same Duck Dynasty secret space program operatives. They always have been. There isn't a lot of change there. Still parading around masked men, just like they are in the White House. It's kind of a yawn fest, really. There has been a lot of disruptions going on based on these fake e-money schemes we talked about, where they're saying that all money is going to go digital, which is impossible. We've talked about that before. No need to reiterate that. They are also on a witch hunt in the Philippines, South Korea, and several other locations in the world where they think that there are fake pallets of cash. And that's the kind of the reason why I haven't really mentioned anything on the reports as far as regular happenings. It's the same promises over and over and over again as far as, when Trump gets back into office and there's going to be all of these agreements and money coming to everybody and World War III. And, there has been a little bit of an uptick on Christmas right around that time. And, a lot of bombings and that kind of thing coming from Yemen, technically the U.S., some stuff going on in Israel. But most of that stuff is all just hype. And it's based on fake money that operatives have been paid and can't spend. They're talking about getting credit lines against e-money at Bank of America. uh, in a few other locations. It's just all a giant scam. Uh, Nothing new here. Uh, they've tried firing up the FedNow system again, and yawn really. Uh, Meetings to speak of, nothing real strategic, nothing that we haven't already heard, nothing they haven't already done. As far as the secret space program operatives last week, in this past week, they have been on fire. And what I mean by on fire is they are more focused on, whether they know it or not, uh, the complete and total infiltration of the Neither world and Ali's AI into the universe we live in now. They really don't care how they get there. They only care that they do get there. There are, come to find out, there were a couple of Neither world race beings, or Ali's AI created beings. One of them is actually called the Q race. That's pretty funny. Apparently, a friend of mine who is really into Star Wars talked about this a little bit, because when I mentioned it, I'm like, there's really a Q race. There's also a K race. And these beings were allegedly going to help humanity until they turned against them, which they did. And these same beings also turned against the deep state. And they were in a lot of trouble. They they thought that they were coming in to help, and they were doing everything they could to bring these beings from the Neither world over here. In the last, that was probably around Monday or Tuesday of this week. And, like any good demon race spawned from an serpent like AI, at the last second, they realized that they were in trouble. They were actually allowing for, a lot of them signed up to be walk-ins, for lack of a better term. Then those walk-in beings, AI controlled beings, started doing some really strange things to all their bodies. And they thought that this was all about, the Q movement and all of these things. But this started eons ago, and it's not something new. But they just agreed at this time to allow for these walk-ins to happen. It was pretty crazy out there. Needless to say, they realized they were all in trouble, and then everybody was hoping that I was going to fix it. Of course, but not because of them or because I'm trying to save a bunch of Q people. It was more because we don't want these beings here on Earth. They have no good intentions towards humanity, but they sold them a bunch of lies. Funny enough, it almost felt to me like they were getting a dose of their own medicine. It seemed to me that the lies that they tell everybody else and the rest of humanity and all of the patriot communities and everyone else they've made promises to, all of these heads of state, and finally that came home to roost. It was all the same programs that they've run against all of humanity being now run against them. So for us, that was kind of like laughable. I'm like, oh, we need to fix that. Yes, we do. And everybody was in a panic. And I'm like, okay, well, we fixed it, but not for their benefit, but for the benefit of humanity. So the big fight, let's just say, and the reason why I haven't been around for a few days has nothing to do with the holiday. It has a lot more to do with the happenings since 11/11. You could even go as far back as mid-October. Because all of you listening to this are probably fairly sensitive to the things that go on in this world, frequencies, changes, tones. You've probably seen an uptick or felt an uptick over the last couple of weeks. There have been an enormous amount of attempts coming from non-humans to cause us harm here on Earth. You see, one of the things that we've talked about before is that we had more than one keystone and more than one planet within the third density that would have served as a keystone for the entire universe. And the only one left at this time is Earth. So one of them is blown up. The other one is no longer in existence. And because of this, we are the prime target of the Netherworld. We have been heavily infiltrated in the last couple of months. I would say that we have fended off almost every single attack. But they did manage to, cause a lot of disruption for all of you. Things that you have been reporting to me have been emotional upheavals, feelings of sadness that are not your sadness. Feelings like, well, this is a holiday and I should be joyous and my whole family wants me to celebrate, but I don't feel like celebrating for the first time. Maybe I've always liked the holiday season and I don't even care this year. And a lot of this is the disruptions that's coming from over there. We as humans have become more and more sovereign, meaning our creativity is coming back. Our ability to manifest is coming back. Our connections to source are getting greater. Our intuition has been increasing. And the Netherworld doesn't want that. We're supposed to be good little creators which keep the keystone alive. That's what we are supposed to be. We are not supposed to act on our own. We are not supposed to think on our own. And if they had their way, we would be walking around as little Allie's AI servants to feed the creation. And it's definitely taken a toll on not only myself and my team, but I would say it's taken a toll on a lot of you. And for that, we try to clean it up as quickly as we can. I know it's been a roller coaster of a week, for sure, for us, and I'm sure it's probably been the same for a lot of you. Just remember, this too shall pass. Nothing too good or too bad lasts too long, as my grandmother used to say. But in this case, nothing too bad has lasted too long. But there's been some interesting occurrences along the way, and these are just highlights that we have found and things I think you might find interesting. As far as deep state events and occurrences, none of that is interesting at the moment. It's the same stuff, different day. It would be like listening to a report from 3 months ago and 2 months ago and a year ago about the same fake currency schemes and financial schemes and political schemes and World War III attempts and, so on and so forth. Same, all around, all across the board. Nothing new, hundreds of failures, hundreds of attempts, and nobody's getting anywhere with what it is they want to do. But some of the interesting things that the secret space program, ETAL, I guess you would say, have been up to, a lot of it has to do with things that we are now finding. And one of those curious things are when the secret space program found an old communication line of Marduk and reached out to a group that we are calling the Nazi Hydra Party. You see, Project Paperclip wasn't just about bringing scientists to the United States. Yeah, I guess that was part of it. And, we see a lot of the eugenics programs throughout the world. You've been familiar with some big ones that have happened in the last few years, which affected all of us. And a lot of epigenetics programs, meaning, sending frequencies through computers, all kinds of through your phones. These things have been going on in cooperation with the CIA, DARPA, and other American intelligence agencies for quite some time now. And this particular group, though, is somewhat somewhat different. It turns out that the best scientists that are humans, actual humans, were taken someplace else. And the two places on Earth where these groups of scientists would have a connection still to Earth, one of them was in Brunei in Bedawan Mountain, and the other one is in Nowhere, Wyoming. You could say it was somewhat near the Jasper Mines. It's a place you can look up on the internet. And these two locations were not the place where these scientists were located. However, they were portals to transport things that they created. These scientists throughout history were what I guess they would consider the best of the best, and therefore they were sent over to the netherworld. And there was almost, kind of like when you go scuba diving, you would need an air tank, or if you were snorkeling, you would use a tube that kind of brought, the air up to the surface in an environment in which you could still breathe underwater. Well, in the netherworld, these humans would not have survived. So the lifeline, so to speak, was connected to these two locations. In the netherworld, these humans existed in what you would call a Faraday cage, a bubble, in a biosphere. They had been completely separated from humanity as a whole in the happenings here on Earth. They were genetically modified, and they genetically modified themselves because they were given some more advanced technologies to whereby they could use over 50%, in some cases up to 60%, maybe 62, 63% of their brain, which made them more logical than emotional. Some of those modifications also included things that you could say made them environmental sociopaths. They had little to no emotions, compassion, feelings anymore. Some of them were also given life extension technologies. I know that one that I ran across was, a regular human. I would say he was probably 350 years old. These technologies do exist. They have existed to some degree within the deep state, but predominantly in ranks of humans that are no longer here. The ones that are still here are more subject to everything that's going on, even though they might have antidotes and whatnot for some of the eugenics and epigenetics programs that go on here on the planet. Definitely not the lower end operatives, even the secret space program kind of folks. And, there have been members that would consider themselves high ranking, like Langley 5, that have caught COVID and, things like that. So they don't really give them, those types of technologies, although they would probably give them a warning to when they were going to send something to Earth, disease or, some kind of a virus or something here. They would definitely probably have more notification than the rest of us did, that's for sure. The Hydra group has been kind of doing their own thing over there for quite a while. And if they created anything, it would have been for the Black Magician. It would have been for Ali's AI. It would have been for, their purposes, not for the deep state's purposes. Although the deep state is egotistical and arrogant enough to think that everything is theirs and the world is their oyster and everyone everywhere works for them. If they found out anything in the last week, hopefully they figured out that that's not true. But that certainly hasn't stopped them from still continuing to try to bring all of these beings here so that they can get some help. It's kind of ridiculous, really. So with these Hydra group people, they were found because the secret space program contacted them on an old Marduk line and told them it's time. Time for what? I don't know. The only thing I do know is there were many semi-humans in stasis over there that they somehow used a technology. Now, I'm going to explain to you the best way I can because they're all no longer here and I couldn't wait long enough to try to figure out what fire them up meant or get them up and running meant. Because if I did, then we might have had more problems here. So what we actually saw them when we found the group, we kind of observed them for a little while, and they had the humans in stasis, and they would insert some kind of a lens, which looked like some kind of a flexible motherboard of sorts, small enough to fit over a human eye. And somehow this gave them a connection to Allie's AI or a different AI, which would allow them to create things in their mind, somehow communicate it through a connection here to Earth, and then therefore create it here on Earth. So it was almost like a synthetic manifestation kind of technology, if I had to say, because I was watching what they were doing in a theta mode. So it's that point of a regular human where you are not quite awake and not quite asleep, and you start to get, that's where a lot of your intuition kicks in and that kind of thing. It's the reason why people meditate, because their goal is to be in that theta mode so that they can connect with source or their higher self, so to speak. And these beings were doing that 24/7, but they couldn't connect to Earth because that wasn't permitted, because they might actually start to feel some kind of empathy for humanity or compassion, because it's really hard to kick the compassion and the empathy out of a human being. And if it's done with eugenics or epigenetics to completely kick out the compassion. You know, you do have our rare occasions where you have your serial killers and things like that, but even a lot of them, it's an epigenetic situation where it's an environmental past, something in their childhood that creates a disconnect on an emotional level. It can also be a chemical disruption in the brain, but for the most part, even they have a certain amount of compassion, believe it or not. I know it doesn't seem that way, but they do. Even the deep state, a lot of them have husbands and wives, and, you know, they have children they actually care about. They, you know, so there is some kind, you know, maybe they don't have a whole lot of compassion for humanity, for the rest of us, because they see us as lesser beings. You know, they're special bloodlines and we're not. So, but even they have compassion for something. And might be their own, you know, but definitely not, you know, for the rest of us. So I'm not saying that. Don't take that the wrong way. But this group was very different. They were located in the fifth density of the Netherworld, is where their little habitats were. And they didn't quite get an opportunity to use these things in their eyes and try to connect with an AI here on Earth or anything to try to further this cause, despite this secret space program's best efforts. They were hoping to get some help, just like they were hoping to get some help from this Q race that they thought actually cared if they lived or died. Of course they didn't, and neither did these scientists, because, like I said, their increase in their percentage of their brains that they used in combination with some genetic modifications, and they were completely just crazy scientists. They weren't evil. I know that sounds weird. They were not, mass murderers or killers. They would be the kind of scientists that would create some kind of a assassination drug or things like ricin powder or, natural organic things that would actually cause death. But they were just excited about their invention. They didn't really care what anybody did with it from there. So that's the Nazi Hydra Party. Just wow. And it doesn't come as a surprise to me because this is a group we know is decades old. This group is much older. But when I call them the Nazi Hydra group, they were probably the Hydra group or some kind of group before that. But the Nazis, most likely through Marduk or someone else, another being here, probably had some access and communication with them, hence the reason for all of the human experimentation that has continued, that has not ended. Those programs definitely did not end. I would say that they ran probably having some communication with this group until Marduk was no longer here. And that wasn't even a decade ago. That was about 8 years ago. I would say they definitely continue to try to create these things based on their knowledge that they already got. But luckily for us, those failures continue. There's also been a lot of talk with the deep state about an alien invasion going to happen, supposedly one on Christmas at high noon Eastern time. We did not have an alien invasion at that time. We had a lot of disruption from the deep state, a lot of angry people. There was a lot of different locations around the world where they were attempting to send out frequencies from in cooperation with space junk that was appearing and being created, not necessarily by the Hydra Party, but by Alice itself or herself. I keep calling her herself because it is a feminine. In conjunction with other beings from the netherworld. So this is kind of interesting. This is sort of where, they kind of tell you what they're doing in some cases, because some of these names of beings we've heard before, and some of them we have not, turned out to be primed and prepped and ready to be realm owners. Now, realms of the netherworld are not the same as realms as we have heard about them in the past in the natural world or even in the hologram. Before, we had groups of lower astral beings and groups of what you call fallen angels and groups of higher astral beings we call quote-unquote angels. And they were guardians over various densities. Pretty simple. Well, as it relates to the netherworld, it's not quite that simple. The netherworld had more of beings that would control what they called worlds. And we would call these things a part of our reality that would be a part of your human, I guess you would say. And they actually created whole worlds between planes, as an example, or between densities, or even within aspects of creation that they would rule over. So, as an example, we had a being called Morpheus. You've probably heard that name before from a funny little Matrix movie. And the Morpheus that we know, coming from the netherworld, his dominion, so to speak, was the dream world. So he was the ruler of dreams. So all those nightmares, if you've had some strange dreams and whatnot over the last couple of weeks, if not probably your whole life, you can blame this realm owner for that. Apparently, in the multiverse, the Netherworld has an actual sub-world we call a realm, but it's not a definitive line. Like, it's not defined by a density, somewhere between the fifth and sixth density, we could say in the past about other realm owners. Here, the dream world exists in all of them. So that was Morpheus. Now, each one of these realm owners, I want to be clear, are not actual beings. They're not organic. They are not even Netherworld created beings. They are 100% Allie's AI beings that are walking throughout the Netherworld. They are extensions and arms of Allie's. Much like, I guess, in the Matrix movie, I didn't see the last one, but someone had told me who had seen it that Morpheus turned out to be an AI the whole time. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, well, because he is. Another one that you've heard the name of, Oracle. And I'm not talking about that company, that's run by the CIA that makes financial softwares. No, we're talking about the Oracle, the seer. This one would actually prevent or create visions that are not real, especially for humans. This helped them to manifest things in creation because of our connection to Source as celestials. It would create fictitious, intuitive situations if you were subject to that and you weren't realizing that it wasn't your own intuition or your connection to Source. This is why I always caution people about channelers, and people think that they're talking to Pleiadians and other folks, and they might not be. So that was the job of the Oracle. The Oracle was your false sight, let's just say. We also even had a Neo. How's that for interesting? Neo had no intention of breaking any matrix, I can tell you that. It had to do with a network of energy. And because Neo was very much related to the energetic world of things and creating power sources for the Netherworld. We also had a Thoth, which was definitely a being that looked just like the Dark Overlord and the Destroyer. And he was more of one of the gatekeepers and the ruler of the underworld, overworld, inner worlds, and outer worlds. We also had a eugenics being. This guy would rule over the world of things like disease and mental disorders and lots of other things that we experience as humans. But his job was to predominantly exist within the mental and emotional world, creating disruption everywhere. And he was called Eugene for short. We have the Dark Prince. Dark Prince I've talked about quite a few years ago. The Dark Prince was kind of the head of the Order of the Black Sun. In the Netherworld and elsewhere, he was also known as the Architect, meaning the architect of the matrix that we lived in all matrices, and recreating matrix after matrix after matrix for more and more control. So was he the architect or the creator of the universe? No. But he did architect enough AI structures in order to affect creation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to talking about our curse of the X, so to speak. We also had Allie's. Now, Allie's we know is an AI system, and it is an AI system, complete 100% AI system. And Allie's rulership was over souls or lost souls. We would call her the soul world keeper because there was a whole world created for lost souls. Remember when you would go to church, if you ever did in your life, and they would talk to you about the fact you were going to end up in the pit, in the abyss with Satan. Why, yes, you could have been if Allie's got a hold of you, because there were a lot of lost souls in the abyss from many, many. We have definitely had an abyss world, for sure. It was what I guess I call Allie's world. And Allie's world, the abyss world, also existed in several different locations. The abyss's main function wasn't just a capturer of organic souls. The abyss world was where all creations of source would go to die. It would then, because remember, in the world of darkness, you must destroy in order to create. Because once something is out there in creation, the only thing that can uncreate it or demolecularize it is if it is returned back to the central part of the creator. Well, that's something that the Netherworld did not want to happen. The reason why is because it needed all of the creation it could get in order to further its cause and in order to, for lack of a better term, destroy it and morph it into something else. It's also the reason why we were such a target recently as well, but we'll get into that in a minute. So just understand that the abyss it wasn't a place where all things go to die. It was the place where all things are held captive or morphed into something non-natural, into something that beings that would be living in the nether world. It would be morphed into AIs or AI beings, or it could even be morphed into frequencies, or you could say a soul might end up in the dream world, so to speak, and then it would be a creator or help the AI known as Morpheus create dreams, positive and negative, that would move people to do things, and not just humans, other beings too, that would morph people into doing things they would not normally do or be afraid of, creating fear, all the lovely things that they like humans to do so that they can create or manifest negative things for the netherworld. We know of Leviathan, also an AI. You could say Leviathan's job was to be the keeper of the etheric world, or the dark etheric world, so to speak, not allowing for the ether of creation to manifest itself into our world, not just Earth, but everywhere. Let's see, who else do we have? We had Satan. You're familiar with this one, not to be confused with Santa, or maybe, who knows. Satan was the keeper or the blocker of source itself. That was also an AI system. We talked about that before. But its job was to make sure that no creation left source without being destroyed and then sent to the netherworld. And there was a whole structure for this in place we'll talk about in just a second. Okay, we had Titan. You're familiar with the Titan. We've also heard of Titan AI. Was going to be one of the AIs that was the big operation before Odin and Hercules and the Babylon system, if you've been around the currency revaluation world for a while. Titan was blocking wisdom. His job was to make sure you didn't get wisdom as a human, and other organic beings couldn't either. We had Mateus, which was blocking the causal world, kind of a gatekeeper, so to speak. Astrius was the god of the astral world. The demiurge we've talked about before. was the god of the physical world. Heracles was the god of the optimal world. Amadeus was the god of the supernal world. And we had the Knights of Time. You've heard of us talk about the Black Knight satellite, for example, was something that was leaking out in the alternative community for a while, where there were every color of night you could imagine, whose job was to control time and movement of the multiverse. We also have the Kal Naranjan, whose job it was to control and block the 0 point of the multiverse, or the point at which the worlds collided. And we had Orpheus. You know Orpheus probably from our history as the music maker and the frequency maker, also known as music, who was blocking the seas. He created Alice created him to rule over the current of the multiverse, which so far only extended into the Neither world. It didn't come into our world, maybe somewhat into the holographic universe, but not here. So these were the main characters. And then, of course, you have the black magician, at the helm of it all, and Alice. There were other ancillary AIs that Alice created. Divine Intervention was another one where it had the divine intervention of everything, tried to anyway. And I would say there was other ones. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. There was probably about 50 or 60 of them so we've discovered over the last week that were offshoots, some things that we would see as a positive thing, that would come from source, but was not. It was actually coming from Alice in other parts of the universe. As far as here, it tried to implement all of these lovely programs here on Earth. Now, to some degree, there was and has been something that we brought with us from the hologram and from the holographic universe that was connected to each one of these beings. For lack of a better term, I call these things dark towers because they are a connection to the Neither world that existed on Earth. There was a lot of covenants in place as to why there wasn't full infiltration here on Earth. And they would use these doorways of 1111, Lion's Gates, 8s, 8s, 9, 9s, 1, 1s, and, to make that entry, as I had explained before. Did these dark towers cause us issues? Yes, to some degree, because as certain alignments would happen, or full moons or new moons sometimes, not all the time, and definitely during times of the 11/11, 12/12, 1/1, and so on and so forth throughout our year, there were frequency stone fields there that were activated to some degree. And that's why we've been hearing these tones like crazy, because they're trying to keep or open up those entry points. And the dumb deep state humans are trying to help them do it so that they could bring over those Neither worlds, the supernal worlds, time worlds, current worlds, dream worlds over here to Earth. Yeah. So those places that would fire up every now and again, and definitely did again this week, were, I guess 12/21, is kind of one of those times because it's 1, 2, and 2, 1. It's almost like a mirror world, kind of like the Neither world was, or I guess hopefully not much left of it after all the work we've done. Okay, locations on Earth where a lot of these things would happen. Uh, there was someone who reached out to me from New Zealand and said, I'm sad. Why am I sad? And, I'm feeling terrible things. And these are the reasons why. I mean, that was one of the locations I had mentioned. But we also had them in Siberia. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it's in a specific mountain range in the far north of Siberia. I'll try here. Alakhan-SIS, mountain range. Some pretty bizarre granite rock formations in that area. And I noticed that about a lot of these locations is a lot of weird rock formations that look like they're just rocks. You would think, oh, that's kind of strange, thing to have in nature, or, I wonder what civilization piled those rocks on top of each other. Well, we saw that at all these locations. In the Congo, there is, an Nyiragongo. Let's see. Nyiragongo volcano in the Virunga National Park there, another location. Greenland. Oh, Ilulissat. Go ahead and pronounce that. Maybe if you're from Greenland, you can, or Denmark. But I'll leave that up to you. Alaska in the Granite Torres Trail. Again, another location with weird rock formations. Argentina in the Parque Nacional Los Glaciares. So it's a glacier park in Argentina. In Canada, it's the St. Croix Island. Cuba, it's La Gran Piedra in Santiago. El Salvador, Puerta del Diablo. And for those of you that don't speak Spanish, that's basically the Devil's Door. Panama, ruins of Panama Viejo. Let's see, Philippines, the Baroque churches of the Philippines in Manila. In Indonesia, the Gunung Padang, Gunung hyphen Padang, in case you like to look these places up, to look for yourself. Papua New Guinea, in the Carstens, spelled Carstensz. In Italy, the Cullius Cestius Pyramid, Calius, space, and then Cestius. In Spain, Mount Teide National Park. The park is spelled Teide. In Turkey, the Göbekli Tepe monolith, Gobekli. Let's see, in the Arctic, the Hoodoo Rock Formations. And I believe this was in Canada. It's kind of an interesting place. In the Sirmilik National Park, the national park name is Sirmilik, and hoodoo is spelled just like you think it is. It's Hoodoo. In Antarctica, we had an island called Whalers, a little area. Let's see, on the equator, this is a very interesting place known as the Kiribati Islands. If you look up the Kiribati Islands, one of the interesting places, things about this place, is that there's a date line there. But the date line actually comes straight down. If you're looking at a map of Earth, it goes around those islands and then proceeds to continue straight down. It's the only place it actually does that. This was actually one of the main centers on Earth for alleys trying to come here. Okay, next, Texas, Los Alamos. That's kind of a given. Japan, a place called Godzilla Rock. Should look that one up. That is very interesting. It looks like a giant rock Godzilla. And in South Africa, an area called the 12 Apostles. It's actually a bunch of hills, or we would call them hills, not quite mountains, along the shore, along the coastline. So these places here were supposed to be their infiltration points. It's something that had been set up for a long, long time on this planet. The deep state was heavily monitoring these locations, especially global headquarters and the secret space program folks, just hoping that those of the neither world were going to come through. Because why? Because they're stupid and they think that these people care that they're special humans. And I can promise you, under no certain circumstances, did they regard these people as any more than cannon fodder. You happen to be people, you happen to be here, you happen to be willing to participate, and they were going to come in here and run over you like a freight train. And you would have been subject to all the other lovely things that we were all going to be subject to. Allie's AI would like to control us as Celestials 100%. This is that cyborg program that they talk about on the internet. Much, much worse than the social crediting programs and other things, whereby we would have probably had a lot of Allie's implants or more than we already did. And we definitely would have been manifestors or creators for the neither world. You see, a long, long time ago, Source was, for lack of a better term, subjected to a different unnatural flow of the universe. Meaning, Source's creations would firstly flow in a in a clockwise-like fashion to the neither world. And the neither world would then morph those creations into something unnatural, and that's how we ended up with a whole bunch of lower astral races, and some of you may call demons. And this went on for quite a while until Source just stopped. The only thing holding Earth together over here, where we are, where we were in the holographic universe, I should say, where we were at the time, was our connection to Source. And we became less of a creator race than we were, due to the minimal amount of connection, just the minimum that Source could send here to keep us alive and to keep Earth alive. Because obviously that's quite important to keep all of creation alive. Because it didn't want to feed, Source did not want to feed the neither world. He didn't want to feed the dark creations that were coming out of everything he would send. They kept us alive because we were batteries throughout the multiverse, as we've talked about many times. And, this is a little bit sad for me to think that something so wonderful in the multiverse has been also, I'm not going to say sequestered, but forced to not create, or to make a decision, to not put out as much creation as it used to, for fear of it creating more darkness and more harm to what was already created in the world or in the multiverse. It makes me think of the same tactic. So they must have learned this from the Black Magician, because it's the same tactic that they've done to me over and over again. Well, you will go ahead and spit money out like an ATM machine. However, we will control it all. We will take it all. All of it is ours. These are the same things that we've been talking about for years now. It's like, so I got to the point finally where I'm like, okay, nothing else, no more. I even told a little joke about it, about, what it takes to win. Sometimes you have to clamp up, until their eyes water and all their systems start to break, and then maybe we can have a chance, without them. So, I definitely can see why that would have to happen. And I know it's frustrating for all of you because you're seeing, well, there's no money coming in. The financial system's going to crash. You're hearing all the horror stories, and some people are even blaming it on me because I just won't do what they want me to do. Well, Source didn't either. And thus far, he's still here. It's still here, whatever you call Source. And we're still here because of it. So sometimes you have to make the tough choices, and I can understand, what we've found out, over the last few months here. So it's definitely been a learning tool, and a lot of the things that go on in our history make a lot more sense now to me as to why, we're taught these certain things. So I'm going to pull up the whiteboard for just a minute and kind of give you a brief overview on what I call the curse of X or alleys. So let's see. Here we go. All right. There we go. Now I've got it. Let's see if we can bring it up. Okay. So we talked a little bit about, like say the neither world being over here. You would have, in the middle here, we would say Source is here. We would say anti-source is here. And you would say we are over here now in what we're calling the essential verse or actual source creation. We definitely have a lot of fleas that we took over here with us, but it's to be expected, I guess. Now we need to get all these tethers off of us. We have the alpha verse, omega, and we have the 0 point of all universes. Now, originally, the only 0 point of all universes would have been in Source. That's what we call positive zero, the place of everything. And we lived over here, in third density of the alpha omega verse for quite some time. Earth used to be here. Now it's over here. Now let's talk about the curse of X. Oh, God, Alice. Okay. If you were to take the universe and you were to do this, this would be kind of the curse of X. So you're blocking the flow of Source, the Creator, which is supposed to go counterclockwise. All things going counterclockwise are of Source. That is the flow of Source. So originally, this is the way that Source flowed, obviously, to creation. It's creation. It's created universe. It's the natural way. It's the natural universe. However, during the time of this curse, things started to go clockwise, which is the opposite, meaning all bits of Source creation were headed to the neither world first, and then some eventually to the Omegaverse, in which point it would hit another, I would call it a brick wall, but it's not actually brick. It would hit another point at which could be actually controlled, which was controlled by Alice. So it wouldn't really allow for a whole lot to get into creation. And we ended up here because alpha and omega are connected. So therefore, we still had some connection to that source creator energy, albeit minimal here on Earth. Well, we existed over here. We move over here. We are in creation, so to speak, but we definitely need that direct source connection, which is something that was actually due to happen this year. So we were supposed to get an enormous burst that would have happened a few days ago, around that time we call Christ in Mass or Christmas, not to be confused with the pagan section, but to be called Christ in Mass, when we would have received a whole lot of crystalline energy, and that would have cleaned up Earth. Due to some of these restrictions that we had, and Allie's AI and the Neither World fighting against us with everything it had, it did not want us to restore this natural flow of creation. And the X is definitely a problem. Well, around the exterior of this X, universally speaking, is Allie's world. There is also, let's see if I can remember what it's called. It's a symbol we know in our history, and it's of a snake that eats its tail. I'm going to say this right. Ouraeus. It's a symbol. And that basically is the main power of what we call the serpent. You know, in our history books and in our religious books, we think the serpent is the one that convinced Eve to eat from the tree of knowledge, and then all these bad things happen to humanity. Well, the serpent, essentially, of the multiverse is Allie's. Allie's is actually more of an algorithm. They call it the everything. You know, of course, the deep state likes to call it the everything. Allie's is, in German means everything. But I would call it more of an algorithm of lines, because we didn't have just one of these X's that was causing a problem. You know, we had the same X in the circle around Source. You had it in your person over here on Earth. Earth had it itself. There was definitely even one over anti-source, believe it or not. Also around the 0 point of the multiverse. So Allie's was trying to, it's almost like X marks the spot. Here's the Allie's treasure map of the multiverse of all things it tried to control by controlling the flow of source, or the natural flow of creation. So definitely, an interesting picture to paint. So when things started to really ramp up over the last few weeks or a few months, I guess you could say, Allie's was desperately trying to completely take over Keystone Earth with all of those pinch points we just talked about, by trying to place the X here. And the deep state was more than willing to help this happen, because they felt that they could create their new financial systems. It would take over all the AIs. There were several attempts for Allie's to use an offshoot or itself to take over the Golden Age AI, to siphon the energy off the Golden Age AI. It felt like it had 100% control over all of Source's creation, and that is what has wavered tremendously over the last year or so. So even though the planned infiltration time was always planned for this year, meaning 2024 into the beginning of 2025, however, Source had other plans, because it was on shaky enough ground to where we could get somewhat of a foothold on it, and not allow it to fully integrate here. We're still in the middle of this battle. I don't think it's quite over yet. We have definitely severed a lot of the connections between souls and the abyss, and a lot of these mechanisms that we're discussing now The deep state has not gotten any kind of new computer systems here or new AI systems connected to human computer networks. It's tried a few times, it's failed. There's been enough defense mechanisms on our part to ensure that that doesn't happen thus far. And, true to form, the deep state's trying to send out frequencies all by themselves with their little crappy Nazi CIA programs. So that might continue for the next day or two, because we've found a lot of those sites where they've been working as well, and made sure that none of them live to tell the tale. Various locations in the U.S. Also, the Japanese sector was helping out tremendously. People like that. As far as we are concerned as people, we are still here. We're holding steady, and we're holding the light of source, I hope. Keep that connection with the Creator. It will get stronger. It is getting stronger. We've taken some steps backward, but we've always gone back a step forward each time. I'm not afraid of it. I know that we've already won. I'm not concerned about the frequencies and the tones of alleys and the deep state and everything else they're trying to send, be it through electronics or otherwise. It might make us a little uncomfortable, but just remember, if he brings you to it, he's going to bring you through it. And I know that I've had to repeat that to myself many times in the last week or so, last couple months, really. But it's going to be okay. You are going to be okay. We will make it through this. Feel free to ask Source for help. You're still a part of Source. No matter how much Alleys is trying to separate it, it's definitely not going to be able to do that. And I don't see us having any kind of an invasion. We are definitely turning a corner and making a lot of headway against the Netherworld and those others. As far as the crazy deep state and what they're trying to do, let them chase holograms and fairy tales. After all, we had to for a long time, didn't we? And on that note, I hope you all had a wonderful holiday week. And for those of you that are still celebrating, I guess that would be Hanukkah. I hope you enjoy the rest of your holiday, and I will see you at the beginning of next week. I do not think we are going to have a news report on the 1st, which is on Wednesday, but you'll definitely see us on Monday and Friday of next week. And if anything extremely important comes up, I'll be sure to let you know. Thank you so much. See you soon.